Why is Joe Rogan so popular? You might be one of the few people that aren't aware of Joe Rogan's popularity, but if you're a male, you most likely listen to his podcasts. And he's got a huge audience. I don't think we really understand how big the audience is. I've been listening to him for quite a while, and pretty much every guest comes on his show and acknowledges the fact that he's pretty much the most popular podcast on the planet. But because of the way Apple does things, we don't really know how many people listen to it, how many downloads there are, because Apple is very privacy centric, and that's a whole other thing. But we just know through the statistics that we do know that Joe Rogan is immensely popular. If you talk to 20 dudes on the street, it's a good chance that 18 of them are probably going to listen to his show on a regular basis. And a lot of people wonder, like, why is that? Some people that don't know anything about Joe Rogan are probably just like, who is this and why is he so popular? But a lot of people do know of him. And I have a few reasons why I think he's just really exploded in popularity and why he's such a voice and really not just a popular podcast, but he's a personality that I think is trusted by a lot of people. And I think one of the main reasons why is because he is trustworthy. I've listened to him for a few years, and I'll admit, when I first heard about him and I first gave his podcast a listen many years ago, probably 5 or so, I heard it and I was like, this guy sounds like kind of a clown. He talks about drugs a lot and he sounds like a meathead. Like, he didn't really, I like to listen to things that I think are kind of intellectually stimulating, and I didn't, at least on the like kind of cursory listen, didn't get any of that. So I didn't understand why he was popular at the time. But a few years later, I gave him more of a chance because I kept seeing interesting people go on his show, and I'm like, well, this person's really interesting. They're smart. There must be something to this show if he keeps getting like very interesting and thought-provoking guests. So I gave him more listen, and I started to understand, like, okay, well, actually he is really smarter than you would kind of assume based on where you know him from. But his background, I'm not going to get too deep into it, but some people would know him from TV shows like Fear Factor is probably his most popular TV show. That was quite a long time ago. He also announces fights for UFC, and that's where a lot of his fan base, I think, probably came on to him. He's also a stand-up comedian, which I'll be honest, I listened to his show probably for 2 years or so, and I had no idea he was even a stand-up comedian. Didn't even know that. But I think that's actually what he kind of considers his main career. But I think, again, he's also very popular because he seems to be an honest person. He's sincere. And I think that's something that we're really lacking in a lot of media outlets these days, whether it's cable news or even some newspapers, like any personality that's supposedly giving the news or doing interviews. We seem to understand it's very sincere, it's very formulaic, and we can almost like guess what the next question is going to be, and there's no real like spontaneity to it. It seems very rehearsed on both the interviewer and interviewee side, so it's not a really interesting conversation. Also, a lot of these conversations that we normally see in traditional media are very short, 15 minutes at most. Sometimes they're 2-minute segments. Joe Rogan and other podcasts, he's not the only one, will have 1, 2, 3 hour long conversations with just one other person maybe. And that makes it much more interesting because let's say you have a popular celebrity or a political person, they go on there and you get real deep in their beliefs. And I think you get a better sense of who this person is versus just maybe even reading their book or hearing some sound bites that they had on some other popular network TV show. So you learn more about the guests. But again, I'm going to kind of take it back to Joe Rogan himself. I think he has gotten so popular partly because he's just prolific and he's consistent. He's been doing this for about 10 years, pumping out, 4 to 6, 7 podcasts sometimes a week. So I think that's the lesson we could all learn is he's persistent and consistent with this. He's stuck through it. The thing has evolved dramatically over the years. It's become this whole different creature that even he'll admit he never planned on it from the beginning. But I think we can all take a lesson in the consistency side of things because he's just stuck through this thing through ups and downs. He's continued to do it, and it's gotten more and more popular over time. And that's something that we could all probably do more of. A lot of us start this interesting thing and we're so psyched to do it, whether it's a business venture or a hobby or something, and then after a few months, things get difficult and we kind of drop it and we move on to something else. So we never really give something a chance to really grow and see what it can evolve to. And usually it's something that you do something consistently for years and years before you see anything really develop amazingly from it. So I think that's a lesson that is pretty important as far as podcast goes. He's also a good interviewer, and this is probably something that he's just developed over time. Again, he's done this for so long. He's just developed the skill over the years. He generally lets his guests speak, and that's another thing I think we very much lack, especially in TV interviews and, God, especially political interviews, where a guest will go on there and is basically shouting back and forth. The interviewer is really more of like an interrogator, and you don't give the person a chance to speak because they're just kind of like battling back and forth. And so it's frustrating to watch. You don't learn anything. Joe Rogan, again, other podcast people do this too, but this is why the podcast format is so popular as well. People can speak for a long time, and their ideas are more developed, and it's more intellectually stimulating conversation, I think. Another thing, again, on Joe Rogan, I think he's just a person that a lot of people like. He's friendly. He seems very genuine when he says he cares about people. I think that humanity side and that caring side is important, because you know that this is a genuine person and he's not being fake, and you know he actually cares about his friends, and he's got a large group of friends, and sometimes he gets picked on because he has these friends that can be controversial, but that's another thing that I respect. I respect somebody that stays with their friends even if maybe they're being ridiculed or their friends do something that even they say like, hey, that's dumb. But you stick with your friendships because those are the people that through ups and downs, you know, you got to stick with each other. And I've always respected that he's got some friends that other people may rag on, but he stays true to it and he commits to his friendship. And I think that's another thing, is probably an important lesson we could all learn from, not giving up on your friends too easy. And, you know, not worrying about what everybody else is saying, and just saying like, hey, this person, we've always been friends. I know who they are, despite what everybody else is saying about them. I'm going to keep being friends with them. There's a few other things, but I'm not going to make this video go on for 3 hours like one of his podcasts. But if you don't already listen to him, I would recommend giving him a listen. Chances are that he's probably going to have a guest on there that you find interesting. And so go through his catalog, look at some of his old episodes, and you'll probably learn something. And that's what I always enjoy about it, is that I listen to a podcast and generally I'll be like, didn't know that. Or, you know, something that's food for thought. So those are just a few things I think make Joe Rogan special in the podcast arena. But if you got some other ones, leave a comment. Kind of curious to know what other people think on this. And that's all I got for this video. I'll see you in the next one.